Hello, hello. This is Vakho, your podcast host. Today I'm on iGaming accent, brought to you by SBC Russia. We are in season 2, episode 7, and we are also in the heat of the World Cup. There are too many sleepless nights for European watchers and European fans, but still we manage somehow to get up in the morning, take our piece of the, let's say, bed and go to work. So right now I'm joined by Dawid Pożoga, who is the CMO and marketing director at STS. And today we will be talking a lot about marketing, what about how marketing differs in the regulatory landscape, what is the big difference between and what approaches they are using, and so on and so forth. So everything connected with marketing. So David, welcome. How are you? How are things going?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Of course. So like when, as you said, it's, World Cup heat right now. So everybody's busy with the World Cup, but obviously it's, big chunk of a tournament is already behind us. So we're kind of fingers crossed for, quarterfinals and semifinals and final actually to be good for us as viewers to watch, but also for the, betting companies as well to see some kind of magic in terms of the maybe not obvious results at the end.
By the way, there were some upsides and downsides, like all the there happened a lot, as I've seen from the markets. Like too many ties happened, too many penalties shootout has happened, and there were some disappointments as well. I think that too many people were cheering for few, let's say, countries. I'm not gonna name it. I'm not gonna name drop anybody, and I'm not gonna shame anybody. But this is what it is. This is why we love football. This is why we are waiting 4 years to just watch the World Cup, and that's the emotion it comes with. And everything what was left behind, it's already in the past. Now let's focus on the next few rounds and let's see who qualifies. By the way, I might ask you who is your favorite team still in the World Cup little bit later. But let's start with our tradition, David, because we have lots of watchers, and maybe first thing I always ask is that how did you end up in our industry? Like, what was the pivotal moment for you to get into our industry, and how did you end it up here?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for it. It's a good warm up, actually. You know, I think it's all about about the sport and the passion of sports, and I was always super passionate about sports, about football as well, as one of the major sports, obviously. And I always wanted to do something with sports. So I was working in different branches from retail, FMCG, and others, cars, etc. On the media side of things as well. But I always wanted to end up in the company that's very related to sport. And this industry, we can say whatever, but this industry is 100% about sport, or maybe 95% about sport, and 5% about handbook and all the kind of cultural betting that is happening in markets. But for me, this was the defining moment. Of course, I've got a bit of convincing from the colleague of mine who kind of convinced me to join the STS. But actually, when I saw the company, I saw the team, and I saw like how we are kind of operating in this business, I was 100% convinced that this is the place for me.
It's always a good to have a friend in the industry, which is the always a good part about it. He can tell all the ups and downs, and he can most probably convince you to switch and get into.
Yeah,
Personally, I
yeah,
have done it too many times. Personally, I have dragged too many friends into our industry, and they can never leave because they love it so much. They are so passionate about the football, about the basketball, about the sports as general. So they are like too much. But let's also consider that our industry is quite different from the other industries, right? And as far as David, you have a lot of experience before joining our industry. I want to ask you about like when you first entered, like what was your first impression about iGaming itself, and also iGaming marketing as a like main topic that we will be discussing today.
yeah. So obviously, the first thing that you notice when you join from the different industries actually the regulation and the overall, how important it is in the regulated market, especially to be kind of compliant. How it goes from the from the marketing to legal, and how you need to be friends with legal, and how you need to be kind of friends with your legal knowledge, what you're actually doing in marketing. So this was the first impression. Obviously, like there's a lot of kind of possibilities that you maybe would like to pursue, but it's not possible for you to go. It's one. And the second, I would say that there's a lot of creativity and fast paced in this environment. So you like as the sports events are happening day over day, you need to be kind of, you know, under the electricity every single moment. So every single day there's something new happens, something new can be big, something, you know, the favorite could lose or the underdog could win. So and you should tell stories about it, because I will probably say about more. For me, marketing is about telling the stories in this and in this industry as well. So this is super important from my side, and this is the second kind of a piece.
I love the part that I think that I have had most meetings with legal team rather than with my team when I was working on B2C side, because they either have your back like 100% and they try to help you out to make all the creativity possible, or they are the ones that say no all the time. So if you befriend them, it is much, much easier, because I remember that every time I was going to the legal, everybody was saying like, it can never go live. Like, come on, what are you thinking about? How are you
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
even ask that? And I was like, guys, we will not know if we don't ask. Let's ask them. Let's see if they have another angle. And there were always people in the legal team that were super passionate about making things possible. And those were the ones that should be befriended by marketing managers. One more thing that I would underline is that creating stories. Marketing is all about stories, right? So how are, let's say, you building an emotional and authentic betting brand with the stories that happen on daily basis, and these stories sometimes may be like bad and sometimes may be good. So how do you incorporate that into the brand and brand positioning itself?
Yeah, so it's a great question, because like the stories needs a good, you know, backbone. No, so you need to define yourself as a brand, who you are, who you talk to, and actually what is your north star, and what kind of stories you would like to tell to people. No, because some of the brands are telling stories about the success and people successing with the brands like ours. Some of the people are just about telling stories about the sports and how sport defines the brands within the industry, and some are totally kind of, you know, all over the place or outside of the box, just to make it loud, make it something completely different. So there are different spaces where you can play and where you can actually tell the stories about your brand. But obviously, first thing you need is a backbone. So you need to define it. You can't be, you know, as we say in Poland, you can't be a tomato soup. No, like nobody, like it's not that everybody needs to like you. No, so it's like you need to kind of define what is your, you know, target group, where's the place and field you want to play with, and then start to produce the, you know, the positioning and the brand behind that is actually backing it up.
And always following that backbone, like even though the times is bad, like for example, to say something or tell the story, if your brand has been built for last, I don't know, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and something changed, of course it needs to be adapted to the world, but still your, let's say, roots should not be changed. Roots should be followed. And I totally agree with you. And I've seen too many, let's say, operators these days really want to be associated with the success cases and with the successful, let's say, sportsmen's, I would say, like it would be easier to say sportsmen's like ambassadors and so on and so forth. And I think that there are some controversies there as well. So from the sportsmanship perspectives and so on. But like when there are successful iGaming brands and there are successful sports men's, it's really important to have really good connections between them. What is your position about, for example, ambassadors, sponsorship, and does they really help a brand to be built up and be positioned in the right way, in the right direction, or is it something nice to have?
Mhm. So this is one of the difficulties I like. That is was my point 3 or 4 to the previous question. Like what difficult I found when I joined the industry, basically. So one of the kind of discoveries I did for myself is actually that here everything is already there, like or was there already. So these ambassadors, like, you know, foreign sport, like former sportsmen, global or local journalists, like, you know, people of culture that are very close to sports, actually, already been there. No, so for me, super important is that this ambassadors, if you're using them, should actually give you the value to the positioning that is the backbone of your brand. if this help, then it helps. No, if it's something that is only gluing a nice and very recognizable face to your brand, not necessarily need to work. No, this is also the case from the influencer industries from the different categories I've been working for. It's not always with the biggest influencer with the biggest reach sell the most of the product. No, it needs to be a context. It needs to be a offer. It needs to be authenticity, because this is something that it's super important for the brands. Very often brands doesn't use it properly. So they're actually having the face, but this is the face and only thing with the face, even if the, like, all the famous cases, the ambassador was kind of, promoting the car brand number one, and paparazzi 2 months later made him photos when he's actually
See,
not driving this car. But like, this is not like, it shouldn't happen. So pick an ambassador who is or close to your brand and an industry to the certain extent, and gives you the value that actually you would like to underline with your positioning and with your brand. So this is probably how you would use the ambassadors. And to the point of who and how it should be, and do we need to use them? Of course you don't need to use them. Many brands at the beginning of their journey with the 360 kind of marketing uses the brand because they think it's the fastest way of growing awareness, which makes sense to the certain extent, but not only through the lens of making a TV advert with them. It needs to be kind of holistic campaign to be kind of successful from my perspective, rather than gluing a nice face on a billboard and then, like, happy days. No, it's probably not gonna work anymore.
yeah, I agree. And just to have an ambassador just to be placed on the banner is like biggest waste of money and time and resources as well. You can do much more. And I really love the distinguishment between like how you compare them to the content creators. Because at the end of the day, there might be a huge, I think that everybody would love to have, for example, the biggest football players that are right now as their brand ambassadors or biggest teams as brand ambassadors. But at the same time, if you look to the niche and to the backbone that you have as a brand, it would be much better in most of the cases to have somebody local, somebody small, somebody that is already connected to the niche that you want to position your brand to. And that is a really big decision to be made. Even like from my previous days, I remember that sometimes we had an option to have one really good sportsman and like one really good, I don't know, like huge, well known international team as a our sponsorship to be there. And also like on the scale there were like 10 different things we could do for that exact many, and like out of these 10, three might would have worked much better because they were the ones that had like a super fans, like a fan that would follow that sportsman till the end of the days in the ups and downs, and would not be like just because of the hype or because of that there is a situation there and he really wants to do that, and so on and so forth. So totally agree on that. Let's now switch to the thing that you mentioned about marketing 360. This is well-known thing, and I think that from top management as a CMOs or marketing specialists, we have heard it too many times. How is our distribution? What is happening? Are we represented in all of the channels? What is happening? Give me the holistic view, and so on and so forth. So I think that's first of all where I start. How do you see marketing as a whole? And what channels are the most, let's say, important ones to not to miss out on? And when we talk about marketing 360, what's as a beginner marketer or medium or like high like CMOs and so on needs to take into account when they are doing and when they are really trying to go after marketing 360?
Yeah. So I will start with the kind of first and foremost thing that needs to happen, and what is the most important in this case that we already touched before, it's actually the brand itself. So the brand should be always the center of it. So there's no 360 when there's a different pieces of the brand all over the place, and at the end of the day it's not one brand. No, so this we need to define. Like the second piece, 360 doesn't always mean all the channels available. It's like if you're a holistic marketeer, like in a big brand, it doesn't mean that you need to use all the channels. No, just use the channels that are actually important for you and for your target group. Actually, this is the main thing, and use the channels that actually corresponds with your KPI. Like, my responsibility also as a CMO, but also previously from the previous experience, is always about connecting the dots between the product, the development team, the so-called sales team in the different, companies, and the marketing. So we're not telling the stories only, for the sake of marketeers and that I'm gonna get an Effie or whatever, Can Lion or something. It's to kind of, make the product successful at the end of the day. So it's super important that we're kind of touching the base and kind of figuring it out, because obviously you can, and you actually can do a perfect and nicely done campaign, but actually that serves business. It doesn't necessarily have to sell, and this is very important, that marketing doesn't necessarily have to sell. It needs to build the brand that sells, not the sell, like not the marketing. And then we can go a bit, lower down the funnel. If you're kind of, talking again on the marketing side of things, marketing loves funnels, obviously. And going a bit down of the funnels, you need to understand, like, what's the KPIs of your brand? Meaning, are you about the acquisition and then steer your 360 and your touch points actually towards the acquisition, or this is retention basically because your brand is mature, maybe in acquisition you have a ceiling, etc., or you're actually somewhere in between, and you need to kind of focus on a bit of acquisition and a bit of retention, but you need to define it first. Like, again, tomato soup analogy, like you need to know what's the focus and where to focus on, because it's not necessarily all the time. Then you can do all, you can kill all birds with one stone basically, but you of course can try. So this is the down the funnel on the kind of channel specific. And then what is most important from my side on the kind of very operational, that actually every single team has the goals, KPIs, whatever. Like, it depends on how you define in your brand, that actually serves the big marketing KPIs and the big company KPIs at the end. So this is the most important. And actually, the story backs the sales, or the backs the product, and backs the P&L at the end of the day, and the other way around. So if you have a very well known brand and there's not much competition in the market, and acquisition is being done organically. So maybe you don't need, all the sponsorings in the market, but focus on the, as you said before, very kind of, context driven, very good pieces that you can utilize properly rather than focusing on everything. And we need to also understand that you shouldn't focus on everything at the beginning of at the end. And also looking at the competition environment, you need to define where to play with the competition or where actually not. No, if you're a leader, maybe you don't need to play wherever the competition is, because you are the leader. So you define where the competition should go. And other way around, when you're underdog, maybe you should hit the competition whenever it's painful and soft, so you can win something with the competition, basically.
One thing that really resonated was that you are mentioning the competition in a really, really good way, because as a brand, you should know where you are compared to competition as well, on a brand wise, and also on positioning wise, and also on market share wise as well. Like, where I agree with you, like 150%, is that if you are a market leader, your strategy should be like 100% different if you are not, because you define the game, you define the playing field, and you define where to play. But there is also one important thing there, and we've been part of it on too many markets with the brands that we are working with, is that sometimes big brands forget that they are in a competition, and they go out of the touch with the market and out of the touch of the competitor so much, and they lose the market so fast that it has happened too many times. Like they are finding out about the competition a bit late. So, like, from my perspective, what I've seen, like, bigger brands needs a new playing fields to be defined by them, but at the same time safeguards against the existing playing fields where the competition hits, because they need to stay the number ones or number twos if they don't want to go to number ones, and to have their own, let's say, cage around what they have built for such a long years. And that is really, really important. And on other things, I think that I will use that Polish saying too many times: don't be like a tomato soup, like, because I like the analogy there.
Yeah, so
One
I
more
have
thing.
one more
As
punchline
far
for you
as
actually to this point, just to close
yeah, go ahead.
this because I think it's also super important about the competition piece, and this is something that I've learned from from the co-CEO or CEO of the one of the biggest e-commerce businesses here that I've been working for several years, and he's always like several times telling me that you need to have this healthy paranoia when it comes to competition. When you're what does it mean? It means that you have your own strategy, as you said, that you know where you play, when you know how it works, but see sometimes like left and right to see the competition behind you, what they're actually doing, because it's not every time you're doing the right thing, and it's not when the competition is always doing the wrong thing. So there are good things about what competition is doing. So it's always worth to have this healthy paranoia to know actually what the companies behind you are doing. Sometimes learn from them, even if they don't even know that you're learning from them, and actually push your agenda and focus on your strategy. So it's not that every time you need to be nervous about it, but it's more about knowing what actually is happening behind you as well.
I will use that punchline as well. Healthy paranoia.
Yeah,
I will
my team hates
implement
it
in my
because I
daily
always
life a
say it
lot.
like to the new teams. I'm always saying it, and actually it's true. And it helped me. This thing helped me all over the years when I'm explaining how we should look at the competition to the teams I kind of manage. So I think it's a good saying. So like, please populate it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I will do that on my end. One one important point there, I think that how like I'm coming from the brands that were focused on few verticals, or they had only one vertical and they were super focused on that. For example, we had brands like only focused on poker. We had brands only focused on exchange. We have brands only focused on sports. And we had brands that were focused on multi-product level sports plus casino, live casino, poker, cash games, and so on and so forth. And when we are talking about the brand, and as the brand should be a backbone of the driver of the iGaming company, what happens when, for example, the time changes and the brand that was super focused on, let's say, sportsbook and super focused on the sport fans, entertainment, like big events and so on and so forth, comes into the competition that are like in the market change or the competition rise where there are other verticals that are much bigger and becoming much bigger than the initial backbone of the brand. Should they evolve or should they adapt to it?
Hmm. So it all comes from like again the root of everything should be the positioning of the brand itself. Well, as you said, also like the brand shouldn't change as the brand in a way, but of course if you're focusing from 70/30 sportsbook versus casino to the other way around, you need to tell the stories a bit differently. But what is super important that actually sticks to value of the brand, like you should keep the values of the brand but tell the stories in a bit different way. So at the end of the day, the guy who was actually behind you when you were pushing sportsbook actually knows that you are the casino guy as well right now. So like I think this is the most important, that you can switch and it's okay to switch. And also, as we were talking about the strategy, yeah, it should be written in the stone to a certain extent. But in, I don't know, if the economic things change, if the regulations change, if the competition changes, you also need to adapt to a certain extent, obviously. So you need to be flexible about moving the strategy, because you don't want to end up on Titanic that you actually can't move because it's too slow and too kind of big. So I think it's super important that on one hand side you have this own one big route that the brand is being defined by. There's a positioning that is also supporting this, and there are values that you also whatever you sell, sportsbook or casino, it's still the same, but the stories behind should be different. So this should be the differentiation point from my side, like how you tell the stories about your brand with your casino, maybe more, more colorful way, more very kind of, specific to the casino in a way, way, plus different moments, because we know that it's very impulse, etc. And it's not related to the moments, but actually your moment in your day, in your life. And on the sportsbook is related to the events and how you tell the stories about the events and sports winnings, etc. No, so yeah.
Yeah, totally. Fault, agreed. Okay. One more important thing, I think that as far as we focus too much and we discussed the brand itself, let's little bit talk about performance marketing, because like it's been a headache for marketeers to push the brand marketing itself and push that we need to have a baseline in order to build everything else on top. And it has been a question for too many things that why are we investing in this that it doesn't have like an instant like return on investment, and why are not we doing this, and why are not we pushing digital channels when we can measure everything by on the day one, and what is the like why are not we balancing it out and blah blah blah. This has been on my desk too many times, and this question has come mostly from the business side. That's pretty much, I would be frank, and I think nobody would judge me, that does not totally understand what marketing do is and what marketers does. But still, I think that there is that thing that performance marketing is kind of separate island, and like a long-term brand equity building and brand marketing is like a different island. How do you cope with it? How do you incorporate it with each other, or if you even incorporate it, or do you approach it as a two separate topic and there are two different teams managing all this? Because I've seen a lot of different ways how big organizations manage it. What's your approach there?
So from my experience, it always works as a one organism, this marketing piece. So it's a one organism. Of course, it could serve different purposes, but at the end of the day, again, root, the same purpose, building the brand that is strong and sell the product that we actually need to market. So I would say that it is a one organism. And of course, why the easiest way to answer, like, performance marketing and brand marketing is that you need to have a brand to have a cheaper performance marketing. And this is the
Mhm.
ultimate truth at the end of the day. The stronger the brand is, the cheaper the performance marketing is, because the less convincing performance marketing needs to actually sell the product at the end of the day. So and this is something that is like it's super important to understand from the you know overall perspective of the whole marketing team and also the sales team as well, that this is the ultimate truth, because I agree, and this is like my discussion with the CFOs, obviously, like, okay, we're gonna invest in the brand marketing, because actually in the long term, the stronger brand you get, the less performance marketing you need to pay to keep the same level of the acquisition, of the retention at the end of the day, no? So we need to kind of take a look very, very strongly into that. And also going into this direction, how my marketing team is operating, there's no monopoly for the creativity and there's no monopoly for building the brand.
Mhm.
So for example, when we worked on the brand positioning, the commitment that we are about this and that we are building the brand about, this going into this direction is something that comes from the whole marketing team. Because if performance marketing doesn't believe in it, at the end of the day, they're never going to utilize it properly in a way. So they also need to be convinced that actually this is the good way of doing things. That we're talking about more, going a bit more lifestyle. For example, in our cases, we have the positioning that is called, this counts more, which means that, the like this emotions and everything else counts more when you're betting in a way, because you can have, fourth league game, but when you put that is maybe not, Argentina or Spain versus Egypt, but actually when you have two PLN bet on this fourth league game, it's already started being interesting. So this is the positioning, and then how we sell the stories in the performance marketing is the same way. So in the same kind of authentic and also like, along the lines way, but it's through the performance channels, because the performance marketing is actually a touch point or set of touch points, channels that you're utilizing your positioning through. So if it's like some like in some formats, and because there's always a discussion in the marketing teams, yeah, but they're like, in performance marketing, the hard sell formats only works, no, or the messages works. Yes, it's true, of course, but make this hard sell kind of creative look that it's actually along the lines of your positioning, along the lines of your brand. This is at least you can do it, no? So your brand is consistent, and by consistency, you build a brand that makes your performance marketing cheaper. Easy as that.
Mhm. Mhm. So by the end of the day, make it so that it is still part of the brand and it is still part of
Yeah,
the like
yeah.
brand positioning you are building and make it interconnected. It is much easier and in the long term, it will make everything much cheaper on the performance side. Totally
Of course.
agree. And it's really cool. I need to ask you one question as far as you are coming from too much regulated environment. And like it's always interesting because there is a fine line about everything, right? So what we can do, what we can do not. Was there a time when you were sitting in the office with a team and you had like 1 month or 3 months campaign ready already? Like you need to just push a button and everything will be up and running. And like there is a last minute change because something was found out. Like for example, you cannot do this and it totally like messed up all the positioning, messaging, marketing, I don't know, brand clips, everything. Like how many times have you went through this?
Well, like my team would say on a daily basis. It happens on a daily basis. We have like different discussions. As you said, like you need to be friends with legal, no? Like you need to be friends with legal because it's we're working on a daily basis to this. Like on the big scale, yes, we did. We did even it was my first or second campaign when we had this discussion that actually, everything was recorded, the TBC was recorded already going, almost going to the, to the TV station and everything else. But we said, yeah, but there was opinion about one of the scenes in the commercial that actually maybe it's like too dangerous that maybe we shouldn't show it that way, etc. So we always do two things. You assess the risk, like what's the risk, and we have this kind of grading system assessing the risk of how big business risk it is, the being the maximum being, you're getting, you need to get your license back or
Like
something like this
backlash.
to the exactly big clash, etc., to one where it's actually, yeah, it might be noticeable, but it's, yeah, you can get a fine or something around it, but it's still kind of, gray area in a way. So we always need to kind of make a judgment call, and this is also my responsibility, but also like I'm very close to the head of legals in our team, and those person who's kind of managing all these things, and we always discuss like how big problem it is for both of us. So how big problem it is for me to change it and actually get the ready TV copy, go back to the agency or to my team to re-record it or to change it, and how much it would cost versus how much bad it is from the legal standpoint. So it's always a discussion, sometimes very fruitful and sometimes not. But at some point, someone needs to make a decision. And the most important thing, from my perspective to this point, it's to make a decision. If it's the decision we don't edit, it's fine because it's too rough, and it's just okay, we play the next couple of months with the same campaign, and then we change it, but it would cost us millions, and it's fine. But on the other side of things, it's to make a decision. Yeah, it's maybe something that we could do better because of the legal standpoints, but we decide that the risk is low enough that we can play with it. And as you said, it's so that as we said, it's so fast paced environment, it's basic happening on a daily basis that you need to change something and do something else, or whatever, or someone else is asking you to kind of change this stamp because it's too close to your football club or whatever. It's like Olympics rings, etc., something like this. So it's always the case.
Olympic rings, I remember it. That was always a hard part because, like,
Yeah, yeah.
even the
Olympics
association to it
committee is
was
always
like,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
They're protecting the brand,
always a
but
bad
also
guy.
look,
Always.
they're protecting the brand not to be diluted. So it's also from the
But
marketing
they are
standpoint.
harming the brand in a way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But like
Sorry. So,
yeah, yeah,
and
it might be the case, but it's more for them to kind of the judge. If they say my rules are strict, okay, you play with us or you don't. No, you're official sponsor or don't, because probably they're protecting the official sponsors. Like you see what happens in the World Cup right now. Like how they're kind
yeah.
of closing the names of not official sponsors that actually they don't have even competition within the sponsors of the World Cup, actually, no. But this is the way
Yeah.
of them to kind of protect the value of the brand to a certain extent.
But at the same time, I love the Levi's version
Yeah.
of it, and I love Gillette's version of it. They have utilized it in such a good way. Like they have doubled down on the bedside as well. And I was kind of frustrated about the fact that I don't remember is it Gatorade or not. I don't remember the biggest misconception also comes from the backlash from the World Cup. From my point of view, beside all the things that is happening within it, is hydration breaks, right? And like what I think that that's such a good point to utilize as a brand, that you are sponsoring the hydration and you are the one that is good or something. That is such a good way to utilize that and use it to towards your advantage. That they are missing out on to like a gold mine there. That like who is managing that? Like why are
Yeah,
they
yeah.
like
I would
under
say
the
that
what are they doing?
I would say that actually I don't know, but I might be kind of 90% sure that it actually came from Coca-Cola. Like actually the Coca-Cola guys came up with this idea and then sold it to both FIFA and the organizers that we need to push for it. So, and this is money being like if I'm not right, someone from Coca-Cola could tell me that I'm wrong, but I believe
So
that like they're smart. I worked with the Coca-Cola brand for a certain time also in the past, and I think it's sometimes very kind of Mark Brandt taught it and then came with this idea to FIFAs of the world and say, okay, maybe let's do this hydration break. It's gonna be hot, so nobody should have a problem with it. No, imagine that we're doing it in March, and you also do a hydration break, even if it's like 15 degrees and like why to do so?
and
No,
it's raining.
especially this, yeah. Especially if they said that it's for the first and last time for now, they're not gonna continue it in the FIFA championship qualifications, this hydration break anymore now. So it's probably marketing stunt that was, thought through by Coca-Cola, sold to the FIFAs of the world, and then this is why it happens.
I think that I've been fan of the Cockpit for too many years, and like this fandom is realizing the stock ownership I own in the Coca-Cola. By the way, this is not a financial advice. We have to say that, but it's
Yeah,
been
of course, of course,
wonderful.
of
They
course.
are paying wonderful dividends and so on and so forth. And I love the fact that it was maybe it was yesterday's game or the game before that, I don't remember, but outside of the stadium, they had like a really, really big, like beautiful building of the whole mirrors and everything. And there was like whole big Coca-Cola banner there. And they knew that there would be a shot outside. They knew that they could utilize it. And I think that they went and utilized it as well. That's
And
so
this is also the
smart and
thing,
so
no? This is also the thing because I probably you saw it that, and this is what I've heard from the media rights point of view that there should not be the shots of anything else than players and the bench during the hydration break. So you actually shouldn't be taking the shots of the Powerade, like name the brand that actually is on the stadium, only the hydration. But now, since 2 or 3 kind of rounds of the World Cup, it already started to be kind of visible that which brand is actually sponsoring the hydration breaks in the TV because this is the rich.
exactly.
No, of course, this is 70,000 people or 80,000 people in the stadium, but the reach is in TV, not in the stadium at the
And
end of the day.
yeah, like it's in billions. I think that like last time I saw the statistics of FIFA, it was like in 2 billion people are watching it or something like that, like crazy
Yeah,
numbers.
yeah,
But yeah, I caught something that you were working for Coca-Cola in your previous
yeah. And the media
job.
agency, yeah, media
So
agency, yeah.
in the media agency, okay. So my question then, what should I learn from the external industries, like not external, but other industries, like that are either connected to our industry somehow or like are totally separate, but it would be awesome to learn from them and use those in to implement within our industry as well.
Yeah, I think you programmed me at the beginning of this because you already said it, no? Because it's something that this industry changes the strategies a lot. No, like if we're not performing for 2 or 3 months, we're already shifting to something completely different. And the what you should learn from the brands, the big brands that you've been working for, it's the brand itself, build the brand, meaning that commit to the strategy to the certain period of time. And of course, we evaluate after the time, but actually let's first give it a possibility to build on rather than just change it the day after something goes wrong. Like because when the strategy is bad, you actually know it the day you start doing it. So then you don't protect it, then you change. But if you already allow this strategy to start, then actually and roll it out and see that maybe you're not winning from the day one, but actually strategies have a positive sentiment and everything else is going well. Don't change it because the P&L doesn't work. Because this also, it's another disruption to this point. So just go more tactically rather than focus on changing the strategy and change the touch points and change the, people managing it, or change the something else, but don't change the strategy super fast. And look on the product priority and look at the product itself, because maybe the product is not really good enough, what you're selling, and then the change strategy. Because I can tell the story about the company I've been working for. I'm not going to name it, the name, but this was for me also after a good learning, is that when I joined one of the companies that I worked for, I've got on board and I was asked to deliver a product that's gonna be the best product ever, no? The best product ever to the target group that we're looking into, no? And I said, perfect. Then I started with my team. We started building the strategy for the product. No, and
It
the
was
difference
product
was
led, most probably,
like
right?
exactly, and the strategy was the day one, the product's gonna be released, everybody gonna run for it, and everybody's gonna build it. No, and in the course of the time, when we were closer to the deadline, when it should start, it came up that the product is probably not gonna be super good. No, not gonna be the best product that we
It's
kind
gonna
of
be shit.
expected. So then I've asked the CEO of the company, saying, okay, do you really think it's gonna be still the best, thing that we could deliver? Top thing? And he said, yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. No, and I said, because if it's not, tell me now, because then I will switch the strategy to something completely different. Actually, to be pre-sell before it goes to live and it goes all the reviews and everything else, because people will buy it. Then in the course of the weeks or months, you're
And put
gonna
it,
repair it, and everybody gonna be happy at the end of the day. But if you from day one only counting on day one, whatever reviews of the product and how the product is being sold, it's not gonna be successful. But he said, no, it's gonna be perfect. And we decided to split apart at some point, and I decided to kind of move to the different company. And the case was the product wasn't successful because they kept the strategy, no, persistently kept the strategy, but they knew the product is not going to be good. But if we change the strategy to pre-sell, then they would sell the product in a good manner, change it, and then it would be successful. No, it is the case. I don't know if you know the CD Projekt Red company that they're doing Cyberpunk. No, the game, the Cyberpunk. They had the same
yeah.
issue, kind of. No, they had the same issue actually, because they released the product that was bad. It was all over the place, obviously, backfired a lot. But they
Very
then, in
bad
the course of the
feedbacks. Yeah.
time, they changed the product, and it actually worked. And the strategy was actually a bit, you know, too hyped versus the end result that everybody was looking into. So yeah, so because we made that out. So what I would change is probably learn from the different companies, keep the brand, don't give the possibility to the strategy to actually settle down, and then potentially reevaluate before, and actually use the commitment of you as a brand or as a marketeer and as a company to talk with the different people, not treat marketing as someone who's actually only producing you the TV commercials or something like this. No?
Yeah. By the end of the value chain, okay, like we have everything. We have product, we have name, we have, I don't know, brand itself, we have strategy. Now let's go to marketing to market it. Like that's the biggest.
Yeah,
Like my
yeah,
nerves were always like, come on, guys, like involve marketing guys from the day one. As far as involve legal guys from the day one, because you don't want to do something that are out of the regulatory as well. Okay, I think that's let's say important, like as a marketeer, one important thing, and as far as it's going, I think that I have to ask you about big major sport events and like it was always a headache. By the way, during my years as a marketer, I hated every New Year, every World Cup, every Euro 2020, every Wimbledon, every major championship. I hated it because like it meant that I had to, I don't know, have like too much at my plate, like running around with the team and always on the deadline, always everything needs to be done yesterday and so on and so forth. And every major event for me was coming with the big preparation that started like, for example, 6 months before even the execution started of it. So
Mhm.
what is like your approach, how your team is managing it, what is your let's say, perfect standard to execute and prepare for big major sport events. And by the sport events, I can slash it and say big, let's say, event itself. Like, for example, New Year is always a fun part about being in iGaming and so on and so forth. So what do you do in order to be 100% prepared?
Yeah. So
Can elaborate, but
first, obviously, like let take time and prepare it up front. Like don't wait to the last minute, because I know the brands that actually waited in Poland to start doing the communication, or like planning the communication to the last minute, when they knew that Poland's gonna be qualified or not to the World Cup. Which for me, and I understand it from a certain extent, because there are some bigger brands and smaller brands. Maybe manpower is not as big as in my company actually, but
Mhm.
have a scenario. Like first of all, plan up front, have scenarios, not only one scenario that is gonna be winning, and be disruptive. Be disruptive, meaning that you need to your daily bread is your offer, is your product, and it's well marketed product of your own that you decide
Mhm.
on the mm, on your end that you're gonna promote during the World Cup, and focus on few things in this. No, we know that everybody, as you said before, there are some companies who has like million different things to promote, but then you need to decide what is what's gonna make a difference from your brand perspective, and so these things are the most important thing. And so plan obviously before, and just be the one who has a scenarios for different situation,
Scenarios.
like in yeah, sorry.
Scenarios for scenarios. I was like going
Yeah,
there.
you make
So
a scenario for
whatever
scenario,
happens, you
because in
need
this
to have.
company it's always about like important thing to like to plan, like not to be surprised by something in a way. No, like imagine that Messi and Ronaldo doesn't play in the Mundial, and you don't know it to the last minute. No, at the end, like, and your communication is about the last dance of the big players actually. No, so it's like you need to have a scenario, but just remember that the offer is a backbone, it's a basic, and the disruption is super important, because you're not competing during this World Cup. You're not competing with the betting partners. You're competing with all the Coca-Colas of the world, actually. No, and this is the most
Yeah.
important thing. Make
Yeah.
something that is outstanding out of the box. At least one or two smaller things that actually wins.
Yeah, and I love that comparison that during the World Cup, you are not competing with your industry competitors, but you are competing for the attention, and you are competing for lots of Coca-Colas that are out there to grab the attention of all the watchers of the World Cup who are sitting down at TV or like offline, online, internet, doesn't matter, everywhere. Okay, that's pretty good. And I think that, David, it's time to move to our, like, we have tradition to begin and tradition to end something. So by the end, we have a tradition to have a blind question. So the tradition is that the previous guest leaves out the question blindly because they don't know, and sometimes we don't even know who will be our next guest. So they leave it out, and like next guest should answer it. This question was left by BP3. So what? His question exactly: what do you like about being involved in the great iGaming industry?
Obviously, as I said, all the things that I said at the beginning, fast pace of it and sport relation is the most important for me. So yeah, please.
I think that's today. Like he left the easiest question. Like it became easy because it was a perfect match of the guest and the themes that we were talking. But totally follow you on that. The passion about the sports itself, and that is really really fast place. Now that we are done, I will just say that and give you time to think about the blind question as well. And before like you leave the blind question for the next guest, I will say one more like important thing that I forgot almost to say and mention that there is only like less than 1 week left to SBC Tbilisi, and like this SBC Tbilisi will be much bigger than all the other previous SBC Tbilisi, and I've been on all of them. Believe us, I'll be there. If you are watching us and if you are seeing me there, just come say hi. And the cool part about it is the regulatory part, and there is a different panel, different discussions, a lot of people coming in. and lots of regulators coming in, as well as other professionals from marketing, design, CRMs, regulatory part, and so on. Everybody will be there, most probably, affiliate payments, and all of them. So don't forget to grab your tickets. There is almost no time already, but be prepared. And back to David. Have you thought about the question
Yeah, yeah,
already?
yeah. I have it. I have it. Like, and my question would be, what? Because like probably the next episode is gonna be already after the World Cup. No, like you're gonna record it after the World Cup. So, what is the
Yeah,
worst thing that happened to you as a professional during the World Cup? Actually, so like
World Cup.
yeah. So that
I
would be great to hear
let
some
me.
kind of not only the success stories that we always tend to talk about, but some failures. I think it's also something that help people to learn.
Okay, okay, that's awesome. So let's wrap this up. David, first of all, thanks for being here. Thanks
Thank
for
you so
being with
much.
us. Like wonderful discussion. Marketing is like still part of my life, even though I'm in product right now, but still like marketing is like passion, sport is passion. And this was iGaming Accent brought to you by SBC Eurasia. See you in 2 weeks. And also, if you see you in 1 week, whoever is coming to SBC Tbilisi, it was my pleasure. And David, one more time, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much.